You're eating healthy food, but you can't lose weight. Why?
Don't you want to look good naked?
So if your goal is weight loss or fat loss, even if you feel like you're eating the healthiest food, maybe you're eating paleo, all whole foods, as close to nature as possible, as I like to call it, just because you're eating healthy, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually in a calorie deficit. So if we want to lose body fat, if we want to lose weight, we have to make sure that we're in a calorie deficit. And there are a lot of quote unquote healthy foods that actually have a lot of calories and are very calorie dense. So for example, avocados. Those are a great healthy fat, lots of nutrients, but they do have a lot of calories. If you are eating like a full avocado, depending on the size of the avocado, it could be anywhere from 200 to 400 to even 500 calories, depending on the size. So although it's healthy, it still has a good amount of calories. It's calorie dense. Same thing goes with nuts and seeds and nut butters. Those are really, really easy to creep up in terms of calorie content. So with nuts and seeds, again, they're healthy foods. They have lots of nutrients, lots of great healthy fats, but a handful of nuts can be anywhere from 100 to 400 to 500 calories even, depending on how big that handful is. And when it comes to nut butters, don't get me started on the peanut butter. It's very, very disappointing if you actually measure out a tablespoon of peanut butter and think about, how many calories are actually in it. I've been very disappointed when I first did that. So don't get too disappointed though. You can definitely incorporate peanut butter and nut butters and things like that. It's just that you want to be aware of the amount that you're eating. So I always kind of think of this as taking the analogy of going into a forest without a map. If you go into that forest and you have no compass or map, it's gonna take you a long time to probably get from one side to the other. You're gonna be doing a lot of guessing, you're gonna be going a lot of different directions, versus if you went into that forest and you had a map or a compass even, it'll be a lot more efficient to get from point A to point B. So think about that as, when you're thinking about going into a calorie deficit and the amount of food that you're eating and that you're actually tracking. So if you're eating healthy, but you're not losing weight or body fat, it probably means that you have to start tracking in order to actually get a better gauge of how much you're consuming. So if you can think about the forest analogy, you go into the forest with a map versus not having a map. It's the same with fat loss. Go into fat loss with the ability to have more of that direction, and that direction is going to come from the awareness of how much you're eating, because that is what's going to determine if you're in a calorie deficit or not. So tracking your food can give you that objective metric that can really give you an idea of how much you're actually consuming, so that you know if you're not losing weight or if you're gaining weight, that means that we probably need to reduce the amount that you're consuming. So you start tracking your food and you start to kind of gauge where you're at. The best thing that I would say is, before implementing any type of numbers or like how many calories should I be eating or anything like that, just start tracking your food. Just start somewhere. See where you're at. I like to say taking about 2 weeks to just start tracking my food as accurately as possible so I can get an idea of where I'm at in terms of calorie consumption and also protein consumption. Those are the two main things that are going to primarily determine whether you're gonna lose body fat or not. So carbs and fats do play into it, but when we're talking strictly body fat loss, it does mainly come down to calories and protein. That's gonna be like 95% of where that body fat is gonna be lost, depending on those two variables. And then the carbs and the fats are really, dependent on you and your individual health, what you prefer, your preference, what allows you to adhere to your calorie intake. Track your body weight, so track your scale weight to see how that is moving across those 2 weeks. And when I say moving, I mean not necessarily paying attention to the daily fluctuations, but pay attention more to those weekly averages, because we know that no matter what, the daily fluctuations in that scale weight do not matter at all. What matters is the trends over time and how those are changing. Whether the trend is going down, it's staying the same, or it's going up. So if you started tracking your food and you're trying to determine, okay, over these next 2 weeks, I'm getting an idea of how much I'm eating, I'm tracking, the trends in the scale over those 2 weeks. So I would take, the average of 1 week and the average of the other. If the averages stay about the same, then that probably means that you're eating around your maintenance intake. And maintenance intake is just the amount of food that you consume on a regular basis to maintain your current body composition. So once you've determined your maintenance intake or an estimate of your maintenance intake, then we can say, okay, this is the amount of calories about that I'm consuming. My weight is pretty stable. So if I want to go into a calorie deficit, then I have to create that deficit through either the amount of food that's coming in or the energy that's going out. And I would recommend starting with what's coming in because that is a factor that you can control way more than the energy or the calorie burn on the outside of the equation. Another thing to point out here too, though, is maintenance is not a static number. So if you, for example, find that you're consuming, let's say just an arbitrary number, around 2,000 calories, and over this 2-week period, maybe, one day's 1,800, one day's 2,000, the next day's 2,200, but on a weekly average basis, it ends up around 2,000-ish calories, and you've been maintaining your weight. So we know that, okay, your maintenance is probably around that 2,000 calorie mark right now. However, maintenance is not a static number. It changes based off of your activity level. It changes based off of the amount of protein you're eating. It changes based off of your body size. So there's different factors that go into it. So I like to kind of think about maintenance as more of a range. So for example, if you were eating around 2,000 calories, that might not be your exact maintenance. Your maintenance intake could be anywhere from 1,800, even 1,700 to like 2,300 or 2,400 calories. So that's important to realize because if you are going into a calorie deficit and you want to make sure that you get into that deficit, it's important that you get out of that maintenance range in order to create that deficit. So let's say that your maintenance is around 2,000, but that range is like 18 to 2,200, for example. If you just reduce your calorie intake by about 200 calories per day, that means that you're going down to around 1,800 calories. That might still be your maintenance. So that might be your lower end of maintenance. So you might be saying, okay, I'm going on a diet. I got my calorie deficit, 200 calories per day. I'm going to take it pretty easy in terms of the amount of that deficit. Go about that for 1 to 2 weeks and nothing's changing. And you're like, man, I'm on this diet. I've been in this deficit for 2 weeks and nothing's happened. It could be because you actually haven't gotten out of your maintenance range. So that's important to pay attention to. And that's why I like to, it's all going to be individual, but I like to start off with creating at least a 15 to 20%-ish deficit right from the start, sometimes a little more just from the start to make sure that we get you out of that maintenance range. And then we can either speed up or slow down depending on how you're responding to the diet and so on and so forth. As you lose weight or as you gain weight, your maintenance range is going to adjust to that based off of your body size. So say you lose 10 pounds over the course of a dieting period, whether that's like, a 16-week diet, you've lost 10 pounds and you're looking to either go into a reverse diet or you're looking to just go back into maintenance for a while, your maintenance intake at that 10-pound lighter mark is probably going to be a little bit lower than it was when you were 10 pounds heavier. And the reason for that is just because you're literally a lighter human being walking on the earth. So your body is smaller. It requires less fuel and less energy and less calories to function. So you just want to make sure that you are paying attention to that. And if you're coming back up to maintenance and you're looking to either stay there for a while, you want to make sure that you're making some adjustments and not going maybe back to your old maintenance, because that might mean that you're actually going into a surplus. So this is, it's a little bit complex, but these are all the different factors that go into losing body fat, but also being able to maintain that body fat down the line. So it's important, if you've been spinning your wheels, if you've been struggling with this for a while, which I did for a long time, it's important to, maybe hire a coach, maybe have somebody with an outside set of eyes looking in that can help you to make adjustments, maybe join a group coaching program like the Flex Fam. That's what we do in there. So yeah, definitely just paying attention to a few of those different factors to make sure that you aren't just spinning your wheels and constantly feeling like you're dieting, but never actually getting the result. Women, we believe